How's it going, YouTube? And we are back with another build guide. This one I'm going to try to be a little quicker and try to graze over some of the info a little bit faster and just provide you with the basics of how this build works and all those sorts of things. So let's just dive right in. We are going to go ahead and start with puncture. We only allocate 1 point just because simply this is used more as an applicator. You know, we go ahead and use enhanced puncture and then fundamental puncture mainly for that vulnerability. Next, we move down to penetrating shot. This is our main skill. And as you can see, I have 9 points of 5 allocated, and that's the reason being is because I allocated all 5 points, and then I have items on my gear that then increase that. And just to show you the importance of this, as you can see, the base damage is between 10,000 and 13,000. If you knock off, you know, those 4 points from the gear, it goes to 8,000 to 10,000. So it's a massive flat damage increase to have those items on your gear. So you'll see that you see the importance of that, and I'll show you the gear later. We're going to take enhanced penetrating shot, and then we take advanced penetrating shot. We really like the slow, and we really like the knockdown. You're shooting your penetrating shot on full energy almost all the time. So this procs most of the time, so long as you're going through your rhythm and all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to take all 3 stutter step, just gives us more movement speed. We do a lot of crits. You'll see our base crit is really, really high. Then we go sturdy, and we just take one of these points so that we can get to siphoning strikes. I take this. This is my only form of regen. You can replace this with the aspect that allows regen on close enemies. Granted, the goal is to not be close to enemies. We're a ranged build, but this is Diablo, you're often nearby enemies or dashing through or whatever, so just getting some life regen somewhere is very, very helpful. I did use the aspect for a while. I personally found that I preferred a different damage dealing aspect and then using some of these points in the tree as opposed to, you know, elsewhere. Alright, moving on, we come down here to weapon mastery, we take all 3, then we move on to dash, we just put 1 into it, and then we go enhanced dash and discipline dash, and this is just mainly, I like to have, this is a defensive thing for me, I like to just be able to escape. I personally do not use unstoppable, so I've kind of accepted the fact that I'll take some freezing deaths and stuff like that here and there. But if you prefer to not die to those sorts of things, you can take shadow step or concealment, and this will give you unstoppable, allowing you to escape some of those situations that I'm not able to escape sometimes. Then we go ahead and use dark shroud. This provides damage reduction per dark shroud. And then we go ahead and take movement speed per dark shroud. So we're flying around and we do an insane amount of damage mitigation. So this is, I personally think this is the best defensive tool that Rogue has. It's fantastic and it synergizes with some of the items in our gear that we'll take a look at later. And then we take all 3 of exploit, and this is just more damage to healthy and injured enemies. And then we have malice, which is you deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies. And then we have an extra point from our gear. All right, now moving on to imbuements. You've probably most often see people use shadow and poison. And I would say that overall, damage-wise, you get a little bit more out of the poison build. Now, I use cold instead of poison, and the reason being is I play a lot of solo, and the freeze and chill for solo is massive for defensive purposes. You know, you're slowing things down by a lot or flat out freezing them, and it provides you a little more safety when you're playing on your own. Poison, you have to wait for it to tick. You know, things are still attacking you at full speed, or maybe you've slowed them a little bit here and there, but you know, they're coming at you still, and you have to wait for that damage to tick. So I preferred to go with cold, again, mainly because I play solo. When I start playing more group play and everybody kind of catches up a little bit, I might try out poison, but for now, I personally prefer the cold. Okay, and we go ahead and we only allocate 1 point, and then we get 4 points from our gear. Again, because increasing this only increases the chill amount. It doesn't give us any more damage, so I'm okay with the chill amount being a little lower. We do allocate a few points into Shadow Imbuement 3, and then we get the other 4 from our gear. And again, we'll go over the gear, but reason being is this does provide some flat base damage, right? You get that 5,000, you know, explosion damage, 5,300. So we threw a couple extra points into there. And then we take Enhanced Shadow Imbuement, and then we take Enemy Infections by Shadow Imbuement, take 12% increase non-fizz. So that counts as Shadow, that counts as Cold. So if once you've shot your one Shadow Imbuement, you're then able to do more damage with all of the rest of the imbuements. Alrighty, and then we take Precision Imbuement. Imbued skills just gain crit chance. I mean, there's no reason not to take that. It's just 9% increased crit. That's massive. And then we go ahead and take 3 into Frigid Finesse. You deal 15% increased damage to chills enemies. Bonus increases to 30 to Frozen. So that's just a nice one. You might be able to find something better here, but I personally like this. Moving down to the ults, we do not take an ult. Again, if for instance you don't like dash and you're okay with not having unstoppable, you could probably work in one of these ults. However, we do take a lot of these lucky hit chance nodes up here. Innervation, 3 into Alchemist Fortune, and then 2 into Second Wind, just for some lucky hit chance. So those are really nice. Now we come down and throw 2 into Adrenaline Rush, just for some energy regen, and then 1 into Haste, a little bit more movement speed. This you could move somewhere else if you feel like you're flying around the map pretty well. And then lastly, we take Precision, and again, this is just, stacks of Precision to increase that crit strike damage, and then when you come out of Precision, you get a guaranteed crit, so with increased damage, so it's a massive hit when that one hits. If it procs with other things, sometimes you'll just get absolutely insane hits. They're just bonkers. All right, so that's basically your tree. Try to breeze through that. Now we'll move to the Paragon. So this is the board that I've come up with. I have 4. I have not decided if it'll be better to go to a 5th board or to just optimize these 4 boards with the extra points that I get. But we go ahead and go through. The first one we're going to use is Infusion, right? So this gives us and this is leveled up. So this is providing 88% imbued skill damage. So that's it's bonkers, right? We go through, we get some armor, get some damage here. Then the next one we're going to take is we take Eldritch Bounty. And this just, if you attack with imbued skill, you gain 20% resistance and 20% increased damage for that imbuement. So we get some cold resist, we get some shadow resist. It's a nice addition there. Down here, we're using the Ranger, and this just gives us marksman skill damage. Again, this one's also leveled up, but a big part of the reason why we like this is the additional bonus. While wielding a ranged weapon, you take 10% reduced damage. My favorite stat in this game is just reduced damage, above resistances, above all the other things, right? Flat base damage is about as good as it gets, or damage reduction, I'm sorry. So we look for that a lot. Come over, we get some more imbued skill damage over here on Potent. We crisscross across the board to take our Eldritch, and then we're up here to take Imbuer, big imbued skill damage, right? And moving to our 3rd board, we go ahead and take Tricks of the Trade. We do not take this legendary node because we don't use cutthroat skills, so we're not going to benefit from swapping back and forth. We only use marksman skills. And then, so the reason why, this is just a good board, we got crit strike damage down here and fizz and all that, but mainly because this has a lot of strength nodes that we're able to take advantage of the additional bonus here to guarantee vulnerability. Granted, it's for 3 seconds every 20 seconds. This isn't the only, you can't only apply vulnerability every 20 seconds. You can only apply it in this manner. So if you have other forms to apply it, you're still able to do so. And with that being said, so long as it's not a boss, you're usually killing things in under 3 seconds anyways, oftentimes in 1 hit. So this is, it's often sufficient. And then we just take damage to elites. This just helps us as you get into higher tier nightmare dungeons. There's a lot more elites, so this just is some damage against them. And then some defense, some armor, and some dex. And as I said before, I'm on 4 boards now. I haven't decided if I'm going to go to a 5th or optimize these and just start filling out, some more of these points. Like we can start taking some more dex to get some more marksman skill damage and things like that. I haven't made that decision yet. As of now, I'm moving towards a 5th board so I can test it out, but I may very well stay with the 4 and then start, you know, maybe allocate some points over here to some distant enemies and things like that. So, you know, we'll see. I'll keep you guys posted. But again, this is arguably the best glyph in the game. Most builds should probably use this, just kind of generically. This is really, really nice. And our 4th board, we went ahead and take Exploit Weakness. I don't think that I will path around to this. Again, I might if I don't end up using a 5th board. It doesn't seem like that minimal amount of damage is worth all of these points, so we'll see how that feels. For now, we come down to vulnerable damage, which is really nice, and damage to injured enemies. And then we move up through this and we use the efficacy where we're just taking a bonus to all rare nodes. And, you know, we get some vulnerable damage, and then here we get some potion healing and some dex. The potion healing is, it's not fantastic, but it's better than you think, again, because we have such low regeneration or life on kill or anything like that, which, again, you might want to try to work that stuff into your gear. It is nice, and again, as we level this up, you know, it'll be good, but mainly we want this because we're just trying to increase this vulnerability damage by as much as we can. And just one last thing. So I was saying marksman skills. If you look here, you can see that penetrating shot is a marksman skill, and so is puncture, right? So everything that's boosting marksman skills will boost both of these skills and damage and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's our tree. And now let's move to our gear. All right. So this helmet, this is a great helmet. Cooldown reduction is a must. That helps us. This is one of the contributing factors that allows us to bring our cooldowns on our imbuements to 7 to 8 seconds. So it's pretty low, right? And then as you can see, we're getting 4 ranks of shadow imbuement and 4 ranks of cold imbuement from this helmet. So this is a really nice helmet, honestly. It took me a long time to get this, but you know, if you can just start getting a few points here and there into those imbuements with some cooldown reduction, this will help with a lot of DPS. Then obviously for the aspect, we are using you gain 0.5% increased armor for 4 seconds, stacking up to 50%. Just a great armor stacking aspect. Next, onto the body armor. Here we just have armor, damage, damage with weapons that swap to new weapons, and damage with ranged weapons. So this has a lot of damage on it. You could put some defensive things on there if you feel like you need it. I feel like we're doing okay. And then here we have, for our aspect, critical strikes with marksman skills deal up to 46% chance to grant a free dark shroud. So this allows us more uptime on our dark shroud, which each dark shroud is providing 10% damage reduction. So we're just, you know, even when we're on cooldown, and we crit so often that this allows us to keep our dark shrouds up, right? Next, we move on to the gloves, and these are really nice too. We have crit strike chance, intelligence, attack speed. We want lots and lots of attack speed, right? So our big stats that we're looking for are crit strike chance, attack speed, and cooldown reduction. Those are our big ones that we want on our gear, right? And then obviously +4 to penetrating shot is a massive damage boost. You want this. You want this +4 to penetrating shot. It is essential. And then attacking with a basic skill cause the damage of your next core skill to increase by 10% up to 30%. Again, we attack 3 times with our basic skill, right? And then shoot our core skill. So long as this aspect is functioning properly, we're getting a free 30% damage increase. And moving on to the pants, we just go flat damage reduction, imbuement skill cooldown reduction, 4 ranks to Dark Shroud. Again, this is providing more damage reduction because for every rank on Dark Shroud, you get higher damage reduction. And then all stats, which is always nice. And then basic skills grant 20% damage reduction. So as you can see, we have lots and lots and lots of damage reduction, which again, it doesn't help with ailments, so obviously like slow and all those things can still be applied, but we're not taking massive hits, and allows us to, you know, use potions or use our healing depending on what we need to do. But survivability is really good with all this damage reduction. Onto the boots. These I'd like to replace. I will probably replace with the unique boots once I find them that provide chilled ground. But this is the only place that I get my unstoppable from, is this aspect, which just when you become injured when you're crowd controlled, grants you unstoppable, and it's max roll 20-second cooldown. But otherwise, the main reason why I need these boots at the moment is the strength and then the movement speed. Dodge chance is nice, energy cost reduction is nice, but these could definitely be better, maybe with some life or some resists or something like that on them. But again, I plan to replace those with a unique if I can ever drop those boots. Onto the weapon, we are using a crossbow. Again, explicit of 60% vulnerable damage is just massive. So we like that. But again, a good bow is also sufficient. On this, we are looking for crit strike damage. You can also look for crit strike damage to imbued skills. Stats is always nice, not necessary if you don't need them. And then damage to frozen enemies, I would like to replace at some point, but for now, you know, that's fine. And then penetrating shot damages an enemy. 2 additional arrows split off to either side. These side arrows deal 20%. This is a craftable aspect, so you can get this from one of the dungeons, but obviously it rolls low. This mod does not drop often. I think I've seen it twice, so it's really hard to find. Obviously that 50% would be incredible for a damage boost, but this is the skill that allows us for our build to function properly. This is the one main necessary aspect that you need for this build to feel good. Okay, so next, moving on to our 2 swords. We use swords over daggers, mainly because we want the crit strike damage explicit over damage to close enemies. And then again, on this, we're looking for crit strike damage. On this one, we have both. Damage to distant enemies. This is actually a really nice sword for the build. And then stats. On our other one, we have damage to dazed enemies, crit strike damage, damage to close, 36. This will also be replaced. And then on our aspect, we use imbuement skill effects, have 34% increased effect on vulnerable enemies. Again, the increased potency is nice, and then our enemies are always vulnerable. Coming back to this, critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 25%. This is massive. Again, maybe it's because I'm a path player, I tend to lean very heavily into attack speed over just flat damage. If you want to be a little slower and maybe replace this with some sort of damage aspect, I think you'd be okay. But I personally love attack speed. So moving on to our first ring. This is actually a really nice ring. I dropped this last night, and it's fairly bonkers. Vulnerable damage, we rolled on a nice crit strike chance. Then we have crit strike damage, high rolled, and then crit strike damage to imbued skills, max rolled. And then making an enemy vulnerable has up to a 50% chance to grant 3% increased crit strike chance. So because we're making all enemies vulnerable, this stacks really quickly, so you just get that 9% really fast. Moving to our next ring. This is a nice ring too. We got that crit strike chance, crit strike damage, imbued skill damage, and damage to crowd control. So that counts as slowed enemies, chilled enemies, anything that alters the enemy's attack speed, movement speed, anything like that. And that gives us energy regeneration. So, and even though it's low rolled, this functions nicely, and we don't have an issue maintaining our energy. And lastly, our amulet. Again, there are some things I'd like to replace this at some point, but again, for our aspect, we use basic skills, gain 44% attack speed. Again, we're throwing things out really quickly. Our 2 most important stats, the ones you must have, are the cooldown reduction and the imbuement skill cooldown reduction. So again, that helps us get our cooldown down to about 7 or 8 seconds on our imbuements, which is really, really nice, and allows us to basically have almost 100% uptime on one of our imbuements, right? And just take a quick look here. We've got a ton of damage, but what we're looking at here is, so right now we're sitting at 41.5 base crit chance, not including, some of our aspects and things like that. So if I had to guess, I don't know the exact number, but I would think that we're critting somewhere between 60 and 70% of the time. Which I don't know if there's a cap in this game, to be totally honest. If you guys know, please let me know. But obviously, you know, that's high crit. That's high crit. So we're gonna try to get it up a little bit higher, but you'll see, you know, from the clips and things like that, that we crit really often. We have a bonkers amount of crit strike damage between our crit strike with imbued and our just standard crit. And then we come down to vulnerability. You know, there's another 237%. So that's, you know, we're doing a lot of damage here across the board. So yeah, that's it. And the build is a lot of fun. It's, you know, some people say it's kind of kitey and things like that. I don't necessarily think that you do kite some things sometimes, and you want some things to group up and stuff like that. But I found more it's about timing out your skills, and while you're timing things, and you're using your basic skill to charge your core skill, you're moving around, you're evading things, and when you get really good at it, you'll be able to start making those movements and while kind of kiting the enemies. And then, as you've seen from some of the clips, you just explode packs. And lastly, we'll go ahead and move into the specializations. We use combo points. Again, it just synergizes so well with the build. You get the 3 shots with your basic skill that gives us our 3 combo points. And then when you go to your skill tree and you look at penetrating shot, as you can see, with 3 skill points up, the damage goes from 10,000 to 13,000 to 20,000 to 25,000. So it's an insane damage boost. The synergy is fantastic, and it works really well, versus bosses, versus packs, versus the butcher. You kill the butcher. I've killed him multiple times. He hasn't killed me in a long time. The last thing I have to do is I have to kill Uber Lilith. I went in there recently and I was doing damage to her. I just couldn't withstand any of her attacks. So I'm hoping by the time I get to high 80s, early 90s, I can go in there and kill her. I'll keep you updated. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. The build is a lot of fun, and I hope you guys like it.